A warrior is not born. He is the sum of the sacrifices he has made. Security is an illusion. Black Vikings is not a brand, not a method of training. It is a way of life. The world will deny you many things. Nobody will ever deny you struggle. That's what I got, that's what I have access to, that's what we work with. A challenge, is done and completed. A saga is a journey where a change happens, within themselves. Do you have the resolve to see it through? Or do you have the commitment to stick at something long enough like that? Most people don't.
In the Crucification Saga that you did, you decided to carry a big hunk of wood over your back.
The whole point was to basically reach a point of struggle, to push myself as close as I can to that edge, and then it really begins from there. My arms were numb. It felt like my arms were being ripped out of their sockets, like I would scream. It was like a guttural scream.
Little does anyone know at this point that you have been crushing your own vertebrae with this sleeper, and that's why your arms are going numb.
It happened 1.5 hours in. I carried on for 8 hours after that. The whole point was to suffer, and I was like, so what? Now you're suffering and you're gonna stop? It's like this. The whole point was this. Let's just go. Suffering is something to master, like anything else. People do not change willingly. You have to have no other choice, and then you can change. This is beautiful. The struggle is beautiful. It's an opportunity.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... Are you willing to die for your principles? Well, that's what happened to this week's guest, Klaus Yohannes, also known as the Black Viking, when he decided to complete what he called the Crucification Saga, which about a month ago was him walking through central London with a 60-kilogram railway sleeper on his back for 7.2 miles. It ended up taking him 10 hours and nearly crushed his own spinal cord, sending him into surgery where he literally had to fight for his life. And now he's rehabilitating himself to try to come back and rebuild himself as the Black Viking and the competitor and the soldier that he really is. And I really love having Klaus on the show. He's a fascinating guy, and he's all about embracing the suffering. And there was a point on this Crucification Saga where he could have quit, but he said that is what the lesson is. It's to teach you about suffering. So sit back. I met Klaus on a random note when I was training at Virgin Gym right behind me. And I think he's a true, interesting guy. It's a real London story. And I think we can learn something about what he's gone through and his plans for the future. So enjoy the Black Viking. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Klaus Yohannes, the athlete, fighter, poet, and founder of the Black Vikings, a way of life built on the embracement of struggle and the mastery of suffering. You are on a mission to complete what you call the 7 sagas, which are physical challenges meant to test the mind and the soul. On April 14th, the day before Good Friday, you attempted the Crucification Saga that nearly ended your life, with you carrying a 60-kilogram wooden railway sleeper across your back while barefoot and bare-chested for 7.2 miles through central London. You expected this march to take 5 hours, but instead it lasted 9 hours and 46 minutes as your arms went completely numb and you repeatedly fell headfirst into the concrete, with people from all walks of life coming to your aid as you finished this journey across the city. 2 days later, you were diagnosed with a self-inflicted, life-threatening spinal cord injury and ordered into immediate surgery. You lost the feeling and coordination in your right arm, but you're going through physiotherapy right now to rebuild yourself and continue your sagas with the Black Vikings. Klaus, welcome to London Real.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. You've had a busy year, haven't you?
Yeah, it's pretty busy. Pretty busy.
Look, I want to talk about this saga. I want to talk about the Black Vikings, but just to put this in perspective, maybe I should tell people how I know you.
Okay.
And so we were both training at the Virgin Gym here right at Moorgate.
Yeah.
And, you know, when I go to train, like when you go to train, I go in to just take care of business, right? I try to work hard. I try to stay focused. And to be honest, there's not a lot of people in gyms these days that do that.
Yeah.
And so I remember one day I caught this dude out in my corner of my eye, and it was you, and you just looked really focused. You were doing some crazy gangster shit. You were like, I don't know what you were doing, but you were doing like, I don't know if it was like this thing with a squat bar where you pick up and thrust around, and you were doing this, and I clocked you, and I was like, all right, this guy's something different. There's something going on here. And I don't know if I said hi to you or not that day, but I kind of made a mental note.
Okay.
And then the next time I saw you, you were doing some other kind of gangster stuff against a heavy bag. And then I blinked my eyes and I looked over and you literally had a battle axe in one hand and a metal shield, like seriously, in the middle of a Virgin Gym. And I just literally laughed to myself and I'm like, I gotta go talk to this dude. So I walked over and I was like, all right, what are you doing? Because, you know, this looks like a guy I gotta get to know because you were doing some hardcore stuff. And from there, I found out a little bit about the Black Vikings, about what you do. And you're like, hey, Bron, I'm doing this saga coming up. I'm trying to raise money for my gym because I want to keep it open. It's a great place for the community. And I was like, cool, man, tell me about it. And I was like, wow, that sounds really hardcore. And you're like, I've done these things before. And so that's how I got to know you. And then I remember you went into the saga. I watched you on Instagram Live. And then all of this other crazy stuff happened. I visited you in the hospital, and I thought it would be great to have you here and tell the story. So for people that don't know much of the background, maybe we just start with the saga itself. So this is about 2 months ago. The day before Good Friday, you decide that you want to do this Crucifixion Saga. Why do this?
I mean, the Death March, like all sagas, consists of 3 attempts. The first attempt, you know, you're trying to better yourself with each one, really pushing the envelope before, you know, your limit.
Okay, so a saga is created to push yourself physically.
But to find it. But the thing is, the nature of people, no matter how hard you want to push in the beginning, you're always going to be cautious, you know? So I know that. So with my first Death March consisted of a 40-kilo sandbag. Did that in 2.5 hours. I was able to train 2 days after. That was no way near my limit.
And so you carried a 40-kilo sandbag, again, through London?
Yeah, through London.
How long?
Christmas Day.
Christmas Day?
Yeah, 7.2 miles.
Do you like these biblical holidays?
I don't know, it's just, I like Christmas Day because I thought to myself, I like the idea that everybody's at home, you know, stuffing their mouths with food, relaxing, and no, I'm out there training, you know, like I like that notion, you know, it's the same reason I've been able to put up with so much in my life. You know, living with no electricity, you know, eating every other day, because most people would collapse at thinking things like that. But what I liked is that I knew nobody would be able to put up with it. And I was dealing with it with a smile on my face, still training just as hard as everyone else. But I liked that, and that pushed me. And I kind of made it like, I don't know, kind of like a novel in my head, you know, a story in which I'm the hero and I'm struggling, and this is beautiful. The struggle is beautiful as long as you're aiming, you know, to come out of it, you know? So I had to add meaning to my suffering.
Okay.
Otherwise you suffer meaninglessly.
And so Christmas Day last year?
Christmas Day last year, 40-kilo sandbag.
40-kilo sandbag, you walking through London.
Yeah.
What did people think of that?
To be honest, we did it, that time I had my brother-in-law with me, and we did it at, I think it was like 7 in the morning, when it was dark. You know, and generally it was raining, it was a horrible day, but people were shocked, you know, like nobody really stopped us. Then last Christmas I went, it was a 60-kilo sandbag, and that I did alone, and that was hard. That was very, very hard.
Okay.
You know, but But I did it in 3.5 hours. So I came back and I was like, euphoric. I was so happy that I did it. I didn't give up. My hands were in bits, but I was so happy, and I was like, I almost wanted to do it again. Like you were saying, I wanted to do it, try it more. I was like, this isn't the limit. So, but then the whole time that I'm doing this, I'm revisiting, I'm doing other sagas as well. So it doesn't follow a specific order. It's whatever is available to me. Some I can do quite quickly, quite easily. Some, for example, require me to leave the country. So those ones I've kind of held back a little bit.
Okay, and you have a whole list of sagas that you want to do.
7 of them.
There's some coming up where you're going to go into the wilderness in Scotland with limited food.
Yeah.
You previously completed a saga where you basically rode from London to Greenland with a team of people, and you rode how far was it?
About 5 million meters.
5 million meters, and you did that as like a saga.
Yeah,
so
it took just over a year, just about a year and 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. And the Crucification Saga that you did 2 months ago, that was this kind of final, hardest core attempt at doing this. And you decided to carry a big hunk of wood over your back, a railway sleeper. Why?
One is something that somebody said to me in the Legion Wrestling Club. And they were like, oh my God, all these sagas you're doing, the Death March is almost like, Jesus' Death March, And I was like, ding, in my head, I was thinking, it's almost Easter. And I was like, I wanted to push myself further with that. We need to raise some money for the refurbishments of the club. And so I thought I'll kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and I'll do that. And but then I thought to myself, I looked into the Death March done by Jesus, which he actually didn't do. If you listen to the stories, I think it's a legionnaire or somebody that helped him carry it. But
he was carrying the cross.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I thought to myself, okay, to make it's about suffering, it's about struggle, and it didn't seem right to have trainers on and a jumper. So I was like, okay, barefoot, bare-chested, and really, the whole point was to basically reach a point of struggle, and then it really begins from there, because the whole point was really to push myself as close as I can to that edge, without hurting myself. But it's a fine line, So,
obviously.
Yeah.
Why? Why are you trying to do this? What are you trying to find?
The thing is, I said to, I always say that I compared to my life before I started the sagas and things like that. As little as 4 or 5 years ago, I referred to myself as a worm, and people was like, oh my God, that's such a bad thing, But when I say worm, I mean, I didn't see myself as worthy of, anything good happening to me, because I didn't have that self-belief in myself. Partly the way I was raised, partly, I always said that one of the first things I learned as a child was shame, and I had to live with that for a long time. And, then I came to this country and I didn't have my father. First I had a bad father, then I had no father. And it was hard, I didn't speak the language. All of a sudden, I'm the only black here. I've got to deal with racism, the National Front, all these things. And I'm just, like a scared boy. So like most, I kind of sided with a group, and I just kind of let people make the decisions for me, and I followed a lot, and then as soon as I could, I built up my physique. I became muscular, I kind of grew into myself. And I thought, yeah, that's it, I fixed my issues. I didn't. I just put some Band-Aids around it, and then it came a point in time when I lost everything. I was run over, so
by a car?
Yeah, my whole body just messed up for many years.
So your self-esteem was low as a child, growing up here, dealing with racism here. Then you built up your physique. To the outside world, you looked like you had it going on, but you were still broken inside.
Still the same, And then I met, my ex-fiance who I was with for a long time. She's an amazing woman, but like I said, I always regret it because, I met a queen, but I wasn't a king, I wasn't worthy of her. And eventually I messed that up. But so when she left, and basically I was just, me, nothing around. I didn't have a job, no savings. My body was messed up. The woman I had planned life with, she was gone. And then basically some other stuff happened with my family, so I didn't have them in my life. So all this stuff was happening, and I was like, it was just me, me and who I was deep inside. And I struggled. I was in a depression for like 4 years. And I mean, in 1 year, I don't think I left the flat more than 10 times in a year. You know, I would literally just lock myself in there. And so the whole point when the conception of the sagas was the acceptance that, you know, I can't use any more Band-Aids. This is who I am. Okay, I have to face myself. This is who I am. How do I change this? What can I do? You know, and so the only thing I always said that, you know, the world will deny you many things. You know, like success if you want it, you know, glory, all these kind of things. But nobody will ever deny you struggle. You know, struggle is freely given. You know, and so I thought, okay, fine. That's what I got. That's what I have access to. That's what I work with. So everything started with just daily cold baths. You know, I'll turn on winter, summer, spring, no matter the weather, put the bath, cold water, and sit in the bath for 10 minutes. And I would do that every single day.
So you basically had nothing left except for struggle. And so you decided to go into that head first and find out how could you evolve through that struggle.
Yeah.
Or
I mean, like partly it's like, I don't even think I saw it as far as that. I just feel like almost like I didn't plan that I'm going to conquer through this and then grow. I just thought to myself, I don't know, but I don't know, to be honest, sometimes I wonder if I began it as something to self-punishment. Maybe it was, I don't know, I would have to really examine myself.
Right.
But ultimately, whilst in the process of all these things, my head became clearer, you know, and Black Vikings became, you know, replaced so many other things. And I thought, okay, this is my mission, you know.
And Black Vikings is a mission. It's a way of life.
Yes.
And what is Black Vikings?
Black Vikings is, you know, I say it's bigger than fitness. Initially, I'd made it, you know, my vision was too small. But as I kind of gone through the sagas, I realized now it's not a brand, it's not a method of training. It is a way of life through glorious deaths and rebirths. You know, so
what does that mean, glorious deaths and rebirths?
A saga, a challenge, you know, is done and completed. A saga, the whole point of a saga is a journey in which the hero begins here. Something happens between the start and the finish where a change happens, you know, within themselves. Now, change like that, you know, I always say everything is subject to change, but people do not change willingly, you know. You have to have no other choice, and then you can change. But generally, people are creatures of habit and comfort, they won't. You know, so for me to be able to change, I had to be broken down, and the whole point of a saga is you're broken down. You know, you're broken down, and then you have two choices presented to you. You can quit, you know, and go back to where you were, or you can choose to carry on. But I guarantee you, once you reach that point of death and you carry on, you know, the process of change begins.
And a saga is just many of these things, continuous deaths and rebirths and deaths, rebirths that could take years, millennia. It's a saga. Okay.
I mean, that's the whole point, is that, you know, like, I mean, some of the sagas, you know, can be done in like, I think one I did in 1 hour and 50 minutes, you know, some a year and a half. I mean, there's the fifth saga, which consists of basically climbing Mount Elbrus, Mount Kilimanjaro, and then Everest, you know, and I will do those. But I mean, how long is that going to take? I don't know. I'm not going to put a number in it, but the whole point is it's also a test, not only of how, you know, not only of do you have the resolve to see it through, but do you have the commitment to stick at something long enough like that, you know? Most people, we don't. Most people try something for a little bit and then quit or fade away slowly. So it's a test of everything, really.
And for you, if you quit, you go back to being a worm. Is that always in your mind?
Yes, of course. I mean, even now, you know, when I was the hardest time was when I was in the rehabilitation center, you know, because I always said, you know, like anybody who shields you from suffering weakens you with what they believe to be a kindness. And so when I was in the hospital, I would try and do things for myself, and the nurses would stop me, you know, and I got angry. I didn't get angry at them, but I got angry that I was afraid that the old me, the worm in there, would start to like it and start to, you know, and so I would constantly fight them to try and do as much as I can, you know, move a chair And it was like a constant battle where they would stop me. Sometimes I'll sneak it in. But then every now and then I would drop, and then security tightens, and I won't be able to move much from there. But
I think we're all worried about the worm inside of us. You know, I think that's why when we see weakness and failure, it disgusts us because we know that's inside all of us. And so that's constantly reminding you of what's going on. Okay, I think I'm understanding this more. And so the Black Vikings, why call it the Black Vikings? Are you a Black Viking? Were there Black Vikings?
I don't think there were, but I mean...
But there are myths of there being Black Vikings, right?
Well, it's funny because basically, like my name sounds quite Germanic, and a friend of mine, and I have axes on my walls. I like the cold, and so a friend of mine joked once, you know, like you're like a Black Viking, you know. I was like, that's two words that you don't expect to be together, you know. So I Googled it, and then a guy came up, the Black. And I was like, surely it can't be a Black Viking. So I looked into it, and I don't think they meant black as in, you know, African. I think more of a, you know, like a complexion, of a darker complexion. But I liked the concept, you know, I liked it. And I started using it, and I still wasn't sure until all of a sudden I started getting all these messages from people, you know, there's no such thing, really like some quite racist, you know. And then I was like, oh yeah, this is the name I want. And they convinced me, you know, that's the irony of it.
Because it stirred emotion.
Yeah, because the whole point of Black Vikings is through the movements, through the sagas, is to provoke change, you know, it's to instigate chaos. And if that instigated some kind of reaction in you, well, then it's the correct name.
And what is that the purpose of Black Vikings then? To provoke people, to challenge them into examining their life and asking them if they've gone what? Too soft, or gotten too comfortable?
Yes, but also, I mean, I always said it's physical betterment and mental freedom, you know? So, I mean, even like, I mean, this is why I say it's more than fitness, it's even in terms of, you know, looking at yourself and the role in the world.
The following success secrets are only available inside the London Real Tribe, where you get exclusive access and insights from our high-performance guests on wealth creation, productivity, leadership, morning routines, health, and well-being. To join our tribe community, go to londonreal.tv/tribe. Now, let's continue with the show.
I think by 2050, they said that 68% of the population will live in urban areas, you know? There's some major changes happening in the world. We are more and more disconnected from nature, you know, from the natural world. And the thing is, we are the natural world, human beings as a whole. And you see the repercussions of city living on people. You know, our bodies are suffering, our minds are suffering.
How so?
Well, our bodies, I mean, I can tell you, you know, wearing shoes is nothing more than a coffin for your feet, you know. Your feet are supposed to splay, they're supposed to wiggle, your toes are supposed to work. And most people's feet are like flippers, you know, from constant pressure by the shoe. And then even in terms of like, I think I would go as far as even depression, you know, and anxiety, all these kind of problems. And then I compare it to like, you know, I look at the city and I see almost like what a zoo is to wild animals, the city is to us, you know. So I think,
we're caged up and on display.
Well, you're being fed, you know, like an animal in a zoo, you know. They have declawed you, they have defanged you, you know, and they've pretty much domesticated you, you know. But the whole point of an animal, I mean, do you see what happens to animals in captivity? No matter how big the cage, there's something that switches off, and that's something that happens inside the wild animals as soon as you begin to feed them. Something happens.
They get lethargic. They don't want to reproduce.
Yeah. And the thing is, also you can't, once that process has happened, you can't reintroduce him back into the wild, you know. And I think it's just something that I've always felt. I mean, they always called me a hippie, you know, when I was younger, which I never understood that term because it's almost trying to, you know, like play off, you know, like, oh, it's just a hippie, you know. But what is a hippie? Just somebody in contact with nature? Are we not nature? Then that means it's somebody who's in contact with themselves, you know. And so the whole point of Black Vikings, I said, is to build what I think I'll call sacred ground, which is basically a community, you know, where the focus can be on the sagas, the installation of the sagas as a rites of passage, for children coming of age, to have, a community based on, physical betterment, mental freedom to question things around themselves, to be able to feed themselves, to learn skills which really are more relatable to the world, to life. Because when we think of life, this isn't life, this is just, I almost compare it to a social experiment,
The city and social media and all that stuff.
It hasn't really been going on that long,
Right, and you want to get back to basics.
What? I don't want you to think that I'm completely against technology and I'm one of those. No, I think there's a role for everything, but I just don't, I think we need to be more independent. I don't like the concept that I don't know, anything about the natural world. To see it, I have to put on a documentary. That's not, it's just not right for me.
And a lot of your vision of the future of the Black Vikings became clear while you were stuck in this hospital.
Yeah. Well, I had time to stop.
Yeah. And I want to get into that as well. But this is the vision for the future. You want to build something where children can grow up and do all that. And you're thinking about orphans or what? You can't have children?
No.
Okay. No. And so what is your plan?
Did I tell you that?
I think you did.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. I mean, I knew. I think I found out in my early 20s, and it kind of devastated me. But I don't know how I put it away into the back of my head, and then I convinced myself that it didn't really happen. The doctor didn't really say that, And then when I met my fiance, and I had a friend of mine who was very wealthy, and he basically said, "Look, let's go private. I'm going to pay for a doctor." Basically went to Harley Street. And they were like, they're going to basically do something called, I think it's called a sperm retrieval. And they did the operation. It cost him it was like thousands. I mean, close to 10 grand. And in the end, they were like, yeah, there's no hope. There's nothing. And
another saga thrown your way.
Yeah, and that was hard. It's hard because, like I said, it happened at that time where I was still that worm. And so in my head, I saw it as, my own failure, even though, it's not something I did. It's something I'm just born with.
Right.
But yeah, and then I just thought, okay, the idea of orphans, I always speak about orphans, and it's mostly because of tied to the fact that I couldn't have children, but also to the fact that, in my country of birth, country of origin, Eritrea, we have a lot, and in Africa as a whole, really. And so I always thought, well, the act, and people will probably say something about this, but the act of procreation is somewhat selfish anyway, because really, you're trying to bring forward your gene. If it was about children, there's so many children in the world already, So I just thought to myself, it is the right thing to do. I said 5. Don't ask me why I said 5. I just always wanted a big family, but yeah, I'll see.
So 5 orphans. I thought it'd be like 5,000.
No, let's start
Black
with 5.
Viking orphans somewhere in the north.
Well,
somewhere.
I adopt 5. They each adopt 5.
Okay.
And they can go on like that.
Okay. Yeah. I want to get into what happened in the crucifixion, into some of the details. But before we get into that, the other thing that always struck me about you, after I met you, I started following you on Instagram, and I got a picture with you and the axe and the shield, is your poetry. And you're a guy that writes poetry, and you post it on your Instagram. And you couldn't make this stuff up, really, Klaus, but your poetry is pretty powerful. Can you talk to me about how you started writing it? And can you share some with us at some point?
It's actually on my phone
at the
moment, and I've switched that off.
All right, well, we'll turn it on at some point. But what's with the poetry?
To be honest, I started when I came to this country. I didn't speak English, and I remember when we came, we were stuck. We literally moved into the Angel area, and we stayed in this flat, and that's where it felt like we stayed in there for a year. We didn't really leave, and we didn't have much. And so it was me and my sister. And I remember we didn't have many toys, so what we'd do, we'd draw onto a piece of paper and then cut it out and then play with the figurines like that. And then so all this stuff we would do with papers. and she would draw, and yeah, and I don't know. I just started writing. Initially, it was in Italian, and then as I learned English, and I would have a dictionary by my bed.
Because you grew up in Naples before
Yes.
you came to this country.
Yeah.
So, and we can talk about that afterwards.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty intense place.
Yeah.
So you started writing in Italian, and then you converted to English.
Yeah, slowly converted to
Okay,
English.
and then you started writing these poems.
Yeah,
about-
I mean, initially they were terrible. Initially, I'm not gonna lie. I read some of them the other day. I saw in my mom's house, but I kept it up. It's the one thing that I kept up for throughout my life, and some point during the early 2000s, like 2005, 2006, I spent almost the best part of that decade going to open mic nights, performing in different places.
Spoken word?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I recorded some stuff, like verging on rap.
Okay.
But yeah, and then naturally just kind of like evolved into this, what it is right now. And sometimes I don't even call it poetry. Sometimes I just call them, meditations more than anything, because I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but I enjoyed writing them, and it's one thing that I've kept up. And it's probably before, it was there way before fitness.
You got anything you could drop on us right now?
Oh God, not off the top of my
All right,
head.
we'll come back to that.
Okay.
Let's talk about the Crucifixion Saga. So I was with you at Virgin, and we did like an Instagram story, and I was like, check this guy out, he's doing it. And I remember I'd encouraged you to film it. I think you were going to film it anyways, but I was like, you got to get this on tape because it sounds epic. And then I remember watching it on Instagram Live the next day, and it looked like hell is what it looked like. And I was wondering if you could talk us through that day. What was it like? What happened? What do you remember from all the details, the people on the streets? I mean, you had a guy in bagpipes following you through central London. Crazy. You had strangers giving you water and trying to help you. And meanwhile, I mean, we're going to post some pictures, but you're literally walking down the street with this massive wooden, like what is it? It's like a huge block of wood over your neck, barefoot, bare-chested, trudging down the middle of London, right, with no shirt on. What actually happened on the day?
Okay, well, first of all, I should say that I think it was the crucifixion happened on the Thursday. On the Wednesday, I was in Virgin training. And out of all the madness I've done in training, I'm adjusting the bench to try and put it down, and my finger gets caught. And literally, as the bench comes down, and it just cuts right through my finger, blood everywhere. And the first thought was like, oh my God, I got the crucifixion tomorrow, But so basically, anyway, I cleaned it up, put super glue on it. And generally with small laceration, I always super glue it. And generally it always takes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, I didn't have much time. So by the time anyway, woke up on Thursday, the guys came over, we picked up this log. Initially, I was supposed to have chains.
Right. Just because a little Hollywood flavor?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I just wanted to make it as hard as possible.
Right, so chains hanging off the block, the railway sleeper, basically. Which is how long? 6 foot?
It was about 2.4 meters?
So 7 feet long, 8 feet long, something like that. Okay.
But and literally, I think I took 2 steps, and the swing of the chain. I mean, each chain weighed 12 kilos. So the swing of the chain was ridiculous. It was throwing me off balance. So we're like, okay, that's not going to work. So we're like, all right, what about if we loop it around? So we tried that, and I took a few steps, and I was like, okay, this can work. And I mean, I walked about 5 minutes, and then encountered the first problem. I was like, unless I'm going to carry this thing all the way through without taking it off, I can't actually bring it down, because if I tilt it to the side, one chain would slide off and then the other one would follow through. So we're thinking of the solutions, and at the end it became too late. I said, look, let's leave the chains, let me just carry this thing. And so picked it up, started carrying it, no problems at all. Around Blackfriars it got a little bit hard, but the problems really began on Embankment.
Which is 2 miles in?
I don't
3
even
miles
think
in?
Yeah, maybe 2 miles.
An hour in, maybe?
Yeah. It was an hour and a half in, I remember that.
And then what was the first problem?
The first problem was my arms were numb.
They went numb.
Yeah, and the thing is, I kept saying, and I know people were telling me that, I kept saying, wait, let the blood come back. Because I thought it was like almost, when you get a dead arm and so I kept shaking my hand, but the feeling wasn't coming back. And so, and to be honest, I thought, okay, I wasn't too worried about it. I mean, it wasn't as bad as it was in the beginning. But so anyway, we walked a little bit more and struggled again, dropped again, and that's when we saw the guy playing the bagpipes.
Because your arms are numb, so you can't really feel them or hold on to it.
No, but what would happen, because they're in this position as high as here.
Right.
And what would happen is, because the numbness, you lose grip. So the grip would go and my hand would just drop, literally just drop. And so I'd have to get in position again. And it just kept happening. And then at one point I sat down and I was really, I don't know, I had to search myself. I was like, okay, what's going to happen now? Because I was like, this is impossible, it can't be done. And I'm going through all these arguments in my head. This can't be done, it's too much. And I'm trying to find, I can't explain, but in my head, I was doing like the mental arithmetic, what is the solution that I can save face? And I mean, I've made this whole big deal, there's people recording, everyone knows about it, I'm gonna raise money for Legion, and now look, what am I gonna do? And so I'm going through all
But you designed this because you knew your brain was gonna come at you with everything it had.
But now I can't do it, I can't quit. How could I quit? So I'm going through all these internal
battles. Video, and you're
battles.
literally laying on the ground. You look like barely conscious.
Yeah, well,
are you tired at that point?
No, it's just, I can't explain to you, but every time, imagine, every time my arms came down, especially when I got to Tottenham Court Road, it felt like my arms were being ripped out of their sockets. Every time, the force of gravity alone. And it would, I would scream. It was like a guttural scream,
And you're not even a quarter way through at this point.
No. And it got really hard at embankment because obviously the numbness, but then I saw a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in a year. And I looked up and I saw him and I was like, what are you doing here? And he gave me a hug.
Do you ever wonder if it's divine intervention?
Yes, I did straight away, and I thought maybe it's coincidence, but at that moment in time, I had to believe it was divine intervention because it got me up, and then the guy with the bagpipes started following us.
So some random guy with bagpipes sees some dude with his shirt off going through with a sleeper on, and he decides to start playing bagpipes for you and start marching with you. Yeah.
And then I remember every time I would drop the sleeper to rest, he would stop playing, and just a silence descended on the whole of Bank. I mean, we're talking hundreds of people here.
We're just sitting there staring at you.
Everyone just starting with their phones,
Recording.
Yeah. So that's why, there's people out there with some amazing footage, better than me. But yeah.
If you have that footage, you got to contact me at London Reel and send it in. All right, so what's going through your mind now? You see the friend, so you're getting these little bursts of inspiration, but you got 5 miles left to go. I mean, that's crazy. It's impossible.
I got to there and I saw my friend, the bagpipes helped, and literally I just looked down, and in my head, all I was saying was 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, and I just did that. And that got me to Trafalgar Square, just saying that. Obviously I was dropping here and there, but pretty much I got to Trafalgar. And then it got really hard because many more people. I mean, it's people everywhere. And then I would drop, and I was unable to bear weight. So as I dropped, I couldn't break my fall, and my head would just bounce off the concrete. And I remember there was one time when I was trying to lift myself up, and I would just drop the other side, and I pushed myself up, desperately trying to get up. But the most desperately I tried, the harder I kept falling, And so
people are giving you water, but you can't even grip the water bottle, right? So they're trying to put water in your mouth. Yeah, I've seen the video, man. You look honestly, you look unconscious. Yeah. I thought you were done.
I mean, the hardest part was because around that time at Trafalgar Square, I remember there was a couple of people there when I was on the floor, literally laying on the floor, and I looked in agony, and people were attacking the people I was with, like, how can you let him do this? And they started panicking. They thought and they're like, Klaus, maybe you could stop, and then they gave me the, almost the reason and excuse, like, it's okay, you've done good enough, you can stop. And it was been so easy to say, yes, I have done good enough. Probably people say, oh, well done. Nobody would have faulted me. I tried, but I couldn't. I was like, whatever's happened, because I knew by then something is happening, and initially, I thought it would be the shoulders. But I knew something had happened, and so I thought to myself, I'm going to have to probably go to hospital anyway. That'd be like dying twice. I was like, no, finish it. Let's just go.
Explain dying twice.
Well, basically, the first death would be, like, imagine, have you ever heard like a coward dies 1,000 deaths? It's like you relive that moment, and every time you relive it, you're dying. You're in that fear, in that backing away from a fight, which is all that would be, is I would be constantly dying that death, constantly. And I just thought to myself, whereas if I just do this now, yes, I die once, my body will be deaf, but afterwards, that's it. I've done it. I only need to do it once. I don't need to do it 1,000 times, And so
then, okay, and I get that. That's logical. But what's the real reason you didn't stop? Are you thinking of the worm? Are you thinking of people you don't want to let down? Like,
I
how do
think
you
it was
get?
a mixture of both, because I thought to myself, like, also, failure is not a bad thing, but giving up when you know you haven't reached it, when you know, like, you could do more, and I knew, yes, I'm not going to get there looking pretty, it's going to be messy, but I knew this is doable. I mean, I'd done the death march before with a sandbag, and I knew, it wasn't like if it was a new march, possibly, it would be okay, but I knew I had more in there.
Yeah, but your arms aren't working, and the sleeper's massive.
Yeah.
And it's making you fall into your head on the ground.
Yeah.
Like, honestly, and I watched the footage, like, I didn't see any way.
But I don't know, I suppose I also drew inspiration from the actual, Jesus' death march, which the whole point was to suffer. And I was like, so what? Now you're suffering and you're going to stop? It's like, the whole point was this. So what, you wanted to suffer in an easy way? There is no easy way if you're really suffering. So I don't know. And then I remember when I was walking, there were some people giving me, so much love, so many Irish people just walking by, Jesus loves you, Jesus loves you. And then there's some guys driving by calling me a wanker, and so it's such
of course,
weird,
you're in England.
Yeah. So
many
weird things happen. I loved
right?
it. I fed from all that energy. And I remember there was one woman, and she passed me, and when she passed me, I heard her say under her breath, "Why would anyone do this?" That kept me going from the top of Trafalgar all the way to Tottenham Court Road. That got just that line.
Just thinking about that in your head, because
feel,
that says it all.
Yeah.
Why would anyone do this?
And I thought, I don't know, it really inspired me. Another part was, which I don't tell many people, but I saw my cousin, who we don't speak, families don't speak anymore. But it's weird because she was walking straight towards me, where you are right now, probably a little bit further back. And imagine, the whole street is full of people, but everybody's moving aside because there's this black guy who's barefoot, bare-chested with a beam on his back. And she was the only one pretending, like she couldn't see me, And I don't know, that fed me as well. So all these positive energies, negative energy, I was taking all of that in, absorbing it in, and it just I don't know, it just helped. And
yeah, it's funny because about 5 days ago in that chair was a guy named David Goggins, and he specializes in suffering as well.
Yes,
and he's got different techniques he uses, and one of them is called taking souls. When he sees someone that he just wants to show them that he can do it, then he's like, I'm just going to take their soul and show them. And the other thing he calls is something going into the cookie jar, and that's where he reminds himself that he's a king, reminds himself, and then you like to say that when you're doing your poetry, and reminds himself of something he's done in the past. And whatever, these are all mental tricks you can play with your brain to push you through that suffering.
Absolutely.
And you're tapping into all of these things.
I mean, I think the beautiful thing was that I was, I really wanted to get to that moment when I knew part of me would want to quit. When I got to that moment, I was just remind myself, why everything started. And mainly it would be my ex-fiance, So, another thing, she's got a new partner now. And when I found out about that, it was the same time that I was pretty much following the sagas. And so I would imagine, like this guy was, I don't know, the greatest example of a man, And I was a worm. And I'd be like, okay, how do I get from being a worm? How do I stand next to this guy? Now, by all admission, this guy is probably not close to even being the best example of a man. But for me, at that time, he had to be. He had to be to push me for me to use him as constant inspiration. So when I was carrying that thing at that time, I was just thought, okay, I'm a little bit closer, but it's still up there. Well, how bad do you want to get there? And that all these little things that I had to keep doing, saying. And yeah, I mean, also people, I mean, I remember at one point around Farringdon, which was the hardest part because it was nighttime now, and we saw some SAS dudes, you know? Yeah. They
you can make a movie about this death march, man. I mean, this is crazy with all these characters.
Yeah.
And this is like 7-8 hours in.
Yeah,
it's nighttime now. You thought it would be over.
Yeah, I mean, I should say I got to Holborn before Farringdon, and when literally started getting dark, the temperature dropped, and I started hyperventilating. I couldn't catch my breath. And there was my friend who's here now, Fritz, and he was working on trying to get me to control my breathing. But I couldn't get it under control. I would, but then it would go. And so then they were quite worried. You know, they were like, maybe we should stop. And I was like, no, let's just do it. Let's just do it.
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website, londonreal.tv, or click the link in the description below.